Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another reading wrap-up. You know, I was planning on doing wrap-ups every other weekend this year, and I have fallen instead into the pattern of doing them twice a month. And it's working for me. I hope it's working for you guys. I know that wrap-ups end up being pretty darn long, but it's working for me with both the filming schedule and just how I want to batch things together, so I'm gonna go with it. That being said, May has been a bit of an odd month for me. I've been busier, though my travel plans for this weekend did get canceled, which is probably okay because it's been nothing but rain. But I've been busy and I just haven't felt like reading as much, so it's been a slower month for me in terms of both reading pace and reading volume, and that's all right. I guess I just need to be doing other things and it's good for my brain or whatever. But and then I look at the list of things I have to talk about today and I'm like, I keep forgetting that I've actually read quite a few things because I don't actually have any of them in physical copy except for one, and it's easy to forget how much you've been reading when everything is ebooks and audiobooks. So with that, let's get into what I've actually been reading in the past couple of weeks. I just want to quickly mention that I read another book in the Vampire Knitting Club series by Nancy Warren. I read the fifth one called Purls and Potions. I still plan on doing a video on this series when I've read about half of them, so I've got 2 more to go until I reach pretty much the halfway point. So more on this series in the future, but basically it's about a young woman who inherits her grandmother's yarn store in Oxford, England. She also inherits magical powers and the vampire nest that comes with the yarn store. There's a lot of knitting and a lot of investigating murders. It is some good supernatural cozy mystery vibes with a strong romantic plotline in there as well, and I've really been enjoying it. There are some things about it, especially some of the romance storyline tropes, that I think are a little bit irritating, but that doesn't diminish my just general enjoyment of these overall. So with the fifth one, Pearls and Potions, this is definitely a Midsummer Night's Dream love potion hijinks. Many people become infatuated with each other when they shouldn't have, and it causes problems, and also there's a murder. It was fun. So yeah, more on this series in the future. I'm gonna try to do the rest of these in the order in which I read them. So we're gonna back up and talk about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I read this with my friend Elmo. That is not her real name, that's just what I call her. She wanted to read this, and I have been meaning to pick up more of Shirley Jackson's work since I really enjoyed We Have Always Lived in the Castle a couple of years ago, and I liked this. I just loved the writing style and the atmosphere that it builds up. Except for one brief interlude, like one chapter, I didn't think it was very scary though. The claim that this is like one of the scariest or best haunting stories, ghost stories ever written, it's like, I don't know about that, but it was still a really good read. So basically this was written and published in I think the 1950s or something, and it's about a group of people who go to stay for like 3 months at this supposedly very haunted place called Hill House, and the house itself just feels wrong. It's literally off kilter, and there's just this real malevolent feel about it. And this group of people, they get together like, this isn't so bad, we're together, we're gonna stay together and not split up. And then weird things start happening, and I feel it's more psychological than real like physical things happening to people. And it's being told from the point of view of Eleanor, one of the women in the group. And I don't want to spoil things by describing this too much. It's really important that the story is from her viewpoint because she's kind of psychologically maybe the weakest link in the group, and the house is focused on her in some way. And it's not always explained what's going on. I think it ends in a kind of abrupt and vague way. But also just like everything fell into place, and I really enjoyed the build up and the prose. It just felt like a masterfully told story. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I finished the Tensor Series by Neon Yang. I read the third one, The Descent of Monsters, and the fourth one, The Ascent to Godhood. I probably did not do this series justice by having like a 2-year break in the middle. I read the first two, The Black Tides of Fortune and The Red Threads of Fate? Oh god, I should have looked this up. Anyway, I really enjoyed The Black Tides and I thought The Red Threads was still good but not my favorite. And then I just didn't read the next two for another 2 years, and I was a bit confused. The Descent of Monsters was not my favorite for multiple reasons. The first one is my fault in that I didn't refresh my memory on the previous events and the storyline that's happening across all of the novellas, and I'd forgotten who some of the characters were, so I was very confused about a lot of the references. But also, this one is written in a more epistolary, almost like mixed media format, diary entries, letters, excerpts from investigation documents, that sort of thing. And that is not my favorite way to tell a story. Perhaps it works with Neon Yang's style more, but I think it highlighted a lot of the fragmentary nature of some of the storytelling, and that just combined with the fact that I couldn't remember some of what had happened before and who characters were, it was confusing. This one really is an investigation into the mass death of people at this mysterious complex where some very horrible investigations into kind of the Slack, the magic system, were happening. A lot of people died, they don't know who killed them, and the whole thing, like everything that was happening there, was kind of a big government cover-up. This novella, I think, really serves to show you the horrible things happening in the Protectorate. Like, this is the rotten core. Something horrible was being allowed to happen, and this is why things needed to change. So I felt like it served an important place in the overall story, but I just didn't get much out of it. The fourth one, though, I really enjoyed. The Ascent to Godhood is a very narrowly focused single perspective story that backs up and gives you a look at the villain of the series. It's also basically a long, drunken story from this woman, and that was really quite funny. So this is Lady Han telling the story of how she kind of rose to power with the Protector, the villain, and then after many years how she became a rebel and joined the rebellion, the revolution against the Protector. So it really shows you where the Protector came from, like how did this woman achieve her power? How did she end up being the person that she was and having all these children who then turned against her and stuff? And it also fills in some blanks about like who Lady Han is and what she was doing. And I really liked it. It was very straightforward. There wasn't jumping around with different types of documents or letters and stuff. And by that time, my memory of what had happened previously in the series was quite refreshed, so I got a lot more out of this one. And I'm glad that that is the order in which I actually read them, because I ended it on a high note, whereas in the middle I was very confused. I think this is kind of an interesting series, structurally speaking. Each novella is a little bit of a self-contained event or story, and I think it's been said that you can read these in any particular order, even though there is a chronology to the story being told. I think it probably works better if you read it in more chronological order. But then again, I'm a very like straightforward person in my storytelling, so whatever. So yeah, I'm glad I finally finished this, and I'm looking forward to whatever Neon Yang does next. Sister Mine by Nalo Hopkinson. I think I alluded in my last wrap-up that I wasn't super enjoying this one. Actually, it kind of turned around and worked for me a lot better than I thought it was going to. This story is about two twin sisters. They were conjoined twins, and they are like half human, half celestial, supernatural being. Their father is a celestial, their mother is a human who's actually been turned into a different kind of beast. So they grew up in kind of this half world of being raised by their celestial family, but also having to live more in the human world. And it's an interesting setup. One of the twins, Makeda, she feels kind of smothered by living with her sister Abby, who is much more successful and talented and has magic, whereas Makeda doesn't have magic at all. She decides very quickly she wants to just leave, get her own place to live, and then stuff starts happening when she decides to move into this very strange apartment complex, basically. And what I really enjoyed about this was unraveling the mystery of essentially the twins' birth, their family, and who actually has magic. What is going on with their father, who is like in a human form and is failing, he's dying basically, and what's gonna happen with his magic? Will he be like reborn in his original form? All this sorts of stuff. At first, when all the elements of the story were being introduced, it felt overwhelming. There was this whole like music scene stuff, plus all the, just this info dumping on how the magic worked and the various things in the world. Makeda has a haint that's trying to kill her. There's a magic carpet. There's like this vine thing that I think is a god, and it's crazy. But it all actually settled down into place by the end. And I think how the plot went, what some of the answers actually were, really surprised me. I did not particularly love the main characters though. I thought Makeda irritated me. Rather than feeling sympathetic towards her, I felt like her whole world revolved around her twin Abby, and she was, even when she was trying to get away from Abby, she was still constantly thinking about her. She just couldn't stand on her own. And then Abby, I thought, was kind of an arrogant know-it-all and whatever, so. But you don't have to love characters to enjoy a story all the time. Yeah. So I'm happy that I gave another book by Nalo Hopkinson a shot and I enjoyed it more. And the next one that I'm going to read is probably going to be The New Moon's Arms, and we'll see where that one takes me to. Next up, the only physical book I have to show you today, I read Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is a modern classic about a young man who begins life in the early 1600s during the reign of Elizabeth I, and then he proceeds to live mostly ageless for the next 400 or so years, and somewhere in the middle he transforms into a woman and is a she for the rest of the story. It was really interesting. One of the things I really enjoyed about this is that it is kind of this self-aware biographical style. So it's the author, who may or may not be Virginia Woolf, kind of commenting on this as she's telling the story of Orlando, and some of the details are lost to history, and so some parts of her life are skipped over or glossed over, and then other parts you get a lot of detail and stuff. And the first 2/3 of this, when it's really about Orlando experiencing first love and heartbreak and this transformation into a woman and the gender roles and, you know, wearing different clothes and stuff, I really enjoyed that. The final third, it kind of goes off into more abstract, metaphorical, long-winded, rapturous passages that are it's very unclear to me what was actually being talked about. For example, at one point, I think it's insinuated that Orlando has become pregnant, I think in like the mid 1800s during the reign of Victoria. And then, but it's not actually said, oh, she's pregnant. And then like 80 years later, there's this very strange scene. I think it involves watching like geese flying around or something. And then it's like, voila, this was all a really long-winded, strange way of saying Orlando has just given birth. And then the child is never mentioned again. I have no idea what the last couple of paragraphs of the story actually meant, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny and kind of sly in places. It had some interesting things to say about gender roles and stuff, you know, from a 1920s perspective. And Yeah, I think I was most surprised that I liked the writing style of this so much, because the only thing I've read previously by Virginia Woolf was Mrs. Dalloway, which has more of that stream of consciousness style, which I don't particularly like. I don't think that this is stream of consciousness at all, and it was just this really rich, beautiful prose, and it really set like the mood and the feeling. I could see the different time periods, and especially the clothing and all of that. It was really vivid, and I loved it. So if the final third of this had been more like the beginning, it probably would have been a 5-star read, surprisingly. I'm not really into modern classics, but it hit right, I guess. Now for something completely different, but also maybe a little bit unmoored in time, Unraveling by Karen Lord. So I'm gonna begin with a little bit of a rant about how this book was marketed. It is marketed as a standalone of like Caribbean mythology fused with this sort of murder investigation. There are gods and undying ones, an immortal woman caught up in all of this, a labyrinth of time and stuff. Cool. Except that it's not really a standalone. This is kind of like a loose sequel to Redemption in Indigo, which came out like 10 years ago. The characters, a lot of the world building and stuff was established in that book and then never really explained again in Unraveling. And I read Redemption in Indigo about 5 years ago, and I loved that book. It was so good. I did not remember specific people though, and that may be part of why I was a bit lost. But I don't think that this book is really a standalone fantasy novel, and I'm a bit irritated that it's marketed and explained as if it were, because I think you probably get a lot more out of it if you read it back to back with Redemption in Indigo. That aside, I don't remember exactly where this story takes place. I think it's never really specified, but I kind of just think it takes place somewhere in the Caribbean. And it's in this city, and there's been like this string of very strange, often ritualistic murders, and they think that they have found the murderer. He's been convicted, he's off the streets, and people are safe again, except this psychologist, forensic psychologist, I think, Miranda, is swept up by like the gods and the undying ones into investigating who really caused the murders, because that person was on the path to immortality and needed to be stopped or something. So Miranda's kind of whisked away and goes into these labyrinths and revisits scenes and stuff. It's this mix of jumping around to different times, like different spots in time and seeing things again, but also dreams and putting together what actually happened. There's also Chance and Trickster, two brothers who are forced to be born into human bodies but still have some of their abilities and are working with Miranda. And I liked the main plot line. I liked a lot of the characters, but it was confusing as hell. It probably didn't help that I listened to this on audiobook, despite the amazing narration by Robin Miles. About 40% into the audiobook, I realized I had no clue what was happening, or that there were these like jumps between scenes, or it suddenly slid into a dream or into a different time period, and I wouldn't catch the transition. It was very confusing. And then there were characters that were brought in, and I was like, I don't think this person has ever been mentioned before, but the text is acting as if I should know who they are. Who is Daniel? I have no idea. Did I forget him? So this had some really good elements. I think that Karen Lord is a really strong writer, and just some passages from this, even just listening to it rather than reading it in print on the page, just struck me. So I think it was really well written, but the structure and that not everything was explained in this supposedly standalone novel, it was very confusing. Maybe one that I should revisit and actually read a print version of it, I suppose. Maybe I should reread that and Redemption and Indigo. But anyway, it was good, but I have a hard time like strongly recommending it just on its own, I suppose. And the last thing that I have to talk about today is a poetry collection, If They Come For Us by Fatimah Asghar. A lot of the poems in this are about partition, the partition between India and Pakistan in the 1940s, the effect that that had on Fatimah Asghar's family, on her parents, and how they came to the US, and then about her experience as a brown Muslim Pakistani woman in the US. And I really enjoyed the beginning of this poetry collection. A lot of the poems that were about partition in particular, I really enjoyed them, and they were informative as well as beautiful and kind of heart-wrenching. And then more of the poems just had styles or topics that I wasn't as interested in and started to lose me a little bit. So it began strong, then it turned into something that wasn't really my cup of tea, I suppose. But once again, like, this may be the theme for this particular batch of books. I'm glad that I read it because, you know, new experiences, I suppose. So yeah, I don't have much more thoughts on this particular one other than I read it. It was the thing. I learned something from it. Okay, I feel like I'm getting a little bit silly and flippant now, so we're gonna end here. Those are all the things that I've read in the past couple of weeks. Do let me know if you have also read any of these, or if you want to, please leave me your thoughts down below in the comments, because I would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back shortly with another video, and until then, bye.